Para todos, bienvenidos a este seminario del Departamento de Economía, el día de hoy, de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas. Hoy nos acompaña el profesor Jinho Jung. El profesor Jinho Jung es ingeniero mecánico de la Universidad de Yonsei en Seúl, magíster y doctorado en Economía Agrícola de la Universidad Purdue en los Estados Unidos. En el día de hoy nos acompaña para presentar su trabajo Spatial Differentiation and Market Power in Input Procurement Evidence from a Structural Model of the Core Market. Professor Jung research focuses on policy design related to corn procurement markets in Indiana, in the Midwest of the US. He is examining the market structure and market power of large entities like ethanol plants and its implication for biofuel policies. For example, policies that aim to increase profits for farmers that will not be successful if ethanol plants exercise their power to push corn price down. Today, the paper that he's going to do the presentation today is about how the procurement of the farmers with the oligopsonids that buy their main product, the corn, is going to develop the market, and he's going to tell us today how this evidence from this market is going to tell us about how this market goes on. Professor Jung, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me for this seminar and then providing me this awesome opportunity to share my research with you and other colleagues in Universidad de Antioquia. I'm not sure I speak correctly, but it's very honored to me to be here. So can I just start from now on?
Yeah, we are live now in Facebook and also here in Zoom.
Okay. So like Professor Vasco introduced, today's presentation will be spatial differentiation and market power in input procurement. It's actually the evidence from the corn market. I am Jinho from Korea Rural Economic Institute, and Juan Pablo Sesmero has used to be my advisor when I was doing my PhD, and then Ralph Ziebert is one of my committee members and joined for this research, and he was really helpful. And by the way, Ralph's wife is Colombian, so. All right, here's the motivation of this research. Actually, every ag economist in the United States, they concerns that spatial differentiation due to high transportation cost of the agricultural procurement and agricultural products can soften competition and give buying market power to agricultural procurement markets. So let me just give you the definition of the agricultural procurement markets first. So in this case, there are lots of downstream firms that buy agricultural products from upstream farmers or agricultural producers and use those agricultural products as an input. For example, in this case, ethanol plants, they buy corn from the farmers and use it as an input to produce biofuel. And at the same time, usually the transportation cost of the agricultural products is really high. And in this case, farmers are responsible for transportation costs. So they have to subtract transportation cost from the corn price they receive from the corn buyers. So this is the definition of agricultural procurement markets. And the second motivation is this, the extent to which spatial differentiation among buyers of farm products affects prices and surpluses. And then that is an empirical question, which means the Professor Vasco already said, because of the buyers have the market power, they try to push down the price of corn they buy from the farmers. However, there has not been that much research on this topic about spatial differentiation as a source of market power in agricultural procurement markets. There's a reason, but I will not explain right now, and then I will talk about that reason in detail later. So in this study, what I did is this twofold. First of all, I estimated a structural model that consists of downstream firms, which means, like I said, downstream firms in here, they are all corn processors, such as ethanol plants or wet milling food processors. Wet milling food processors is like the producers of corn syrup or cereals and any other processed products from corn. So they buy corn, which is an input, from upstream corn farmers. And at the same time, there are other buyers of the corn, but they are smaller than the ethanol plants and wet milling food processors. For example, they are livestock producers. They purchase corn and feed the corn to their cows and pigs. And there are dry milling food processors and exporters. So there are two kinds of processors. Like we said, now you can see there's a wet milling food processors and dry milling food processors. Normally, it's the big difference between wet milling and dry milling is the way it processes corns. Wet millers use more oils and others, and dry millers, it is dried process. And at the same time, I focus on the state of Indiana in this case, because first of all, the spatial differentiation based on high transportation cost, we don't have to think about the whole Corn Belt area, which covers multiple states like Indiana, Illinois, Iowa. But in this case, I can focus on the state of Indiana. The second of all, there are only a few buyers, few wet millers and few ethanol plants, and they buy large amount of corn from the large number of farmers that are spatially dispersed all around the state of Indiana. Okay, this is the first thing I do in this research. And second main point that I do in this research is I empirically examine whether spatial differentiation allows firms to suppress corn price below a competitive benchmark. So like I said, this is going to be buyer side market power. So buyers trying to push down the price they pay to the farmers. And then I call the difference between the price the buyers offer and the value of marginal product, which is the competitive benchmark, marked down. So competitive benchmark, the value of marginal product is this. If the market is perfectly competitive, corn buyers, ethanol plants, they have to pay higher price, which is exactly the same as output price multiplied by marginal productivity of the corn. And second of all, based on the spatial differentiation, I also empirically examine if they actually exercise spatial price discrimination. The spatial price discrimination in this case is this. So the farmers nearby the ethanol plant or wet millers, they have small transportation costs because the distance between them is really small. And in that case, maybe the food processors or buyers with market power know this, and then they try to push down the corn price more to the farmers nearby than the farmers farther away. So I'm going to empirically examine the existence of the spatial price discrimination. By the way, if there's any question in between, just feel free to raise your hand and ask me some questions. That's totally fine. All right, here's the three main objectives of my study by conducting those two main investigations. First of all, I explicitly estimate transportation cost and spatial differentiation. So, and then second of all, I estimate markdown, which is the difference between price offered by buyers with market power and its competitive benchmark, and spatial price discrimination exerted by large corn processors. Third, this is going to be the counterfactual simulations of evaluating the economic effects of industry consolidation or mergers and acquisitions between big buyers. My research contributed the world of this industry organization field in three folds. First of all, there are a couple of previous studies which examines the buying market power in agricultural procurement markets, but they impose buying power, but they did not empirically estimate it. So this research is actually the first one which empirically estimate buying power and spatial price discrimination, spatial differentiation as a source of oligopsonistic market power. Third, this is the main reason why the previous studies did not do this, even though they were already aware of the market power. in order to estimate the buying market power, they need firm level data. Here's the firm level data means. So one ethanol plant, they try to charge different prices to farmers depending on the distance between ethanol plants and farmers. But those data normally does not exist, or even though they exist, the firms or ethanol plant or wet millers, they are not willing to share the data because it's kind of confidential information for their business strategy. So I have overcome this unavailability of the firm level data by using one of the novel estimation methodology that I'm going to introduce in a minute. So this is basically, I can recover the firm level data from aggregated market level data, and I will show you how I did it. So for those of you who need to leave a little earlier today, let me just briefly review the findings before I move on to my main presentation. First of all, I found evidence of spatial differentiation among large processors with high transportation cost. Second of all, spatial differentiation finally result in input price markdown. So they actually exercise markdown to push down the corn price below the competitive benchmark. However, I did not find any spatial price discrimination. Fourth, from the counterfactual simulations, the consolidation or mergers and acquisition among nearby competitors, so which compose of the small localized market, that reduces the degree of competition. So they increase markdown substantially by 20%. Even though even some of the non-merged or non-consolidated competitors, they also enjoy this reduced degree of competition, and also they try to increase their markdown, but by less than the one exercised by consolidated competitors. So this means farm surplus is reduced because they receive much lower price compared to before the mergers and acquisition happens. Finally, the consolidation among distant competitors that do not consist of the same localized market, there is actually no impact on markdown and farm surplus. So let me just explain the corn market in Indiana first. This is the snapshot of 2014. As we can see over here, this is Indiana, and this small cell is the county. There are 92 counties in Indiana. And then the red dots is the wet millers. There are only 4 wet millers. And yellow dots are ethanol plants. There are actually 13 ethanol plants in Indiana. The green dots are export importers, export imports. And then the blue shade is the representation of the corn supply, the amount of corn produced in each county. So as we could see here, most of the plants and wet millers, they are located in counties where the corn production is high, so that they can easily absorb or easily buy some corns they need. At the same time, each ethanol plant and wet millers, they face different degrees of competition. In this case, in the middle northern part, this one is only the ethanol plant is county and around it. And in this middle east area, there are lots of ethanol plants which compete for corn. And based on the previous study, the corn travels on average 50 miles, at most 80 miles, which means, so the average distance between 2 nearby county is 30 miles. So on average, 50 miles means corn can travel to just only 2 counties. This makes this market localized. And at the same time, farmers are responsible for transportation costs, right? So farmers, they can only travel to 2 counties, and they have no option if there is only one ethanol plant in their own county. In this case, look at this, the one in northern middle area, there's no ethanol plant around the county at all. So farmers cannot travel to the far away. So this is how big giant buyers can exercise market power. The right-hand side, the graph shows that this is the composition of corn uses in Indiana. So ethanol plants, only 13 ethanol plants and four wet millers. so 13 ethanol plants consumes 40% of total Indiana corn. And 4 wet millers, they consume 20% of all Indiana corn. And others, animal feeders, there are almost 20,000. So they consume 16% of the corn, and dry millers, corn exporters, they also consume a small amount of corn. In a picture of state, so 18 ethanol plants at wet millers consume total Indiana corn. So each plant or each processors consume less than 10%, which does not show that they have a monopolized market power. But at the same time, like I said, we have to focus on county, not the state, because transportation cost forms the market in these 2 counties. So when we look at the county level data, it shows totally different aspect. So ethanol plants, so there are 14 ethanol plants, and they consume, on average, double as much corn as it is produced in the county where it is located. Like I said, each plant consumes less than 9% of the total state Indiana state corn, but when it comes to county corn, they need double, more than twice corn. It is produced in the county where it is located. When it comes to wet millers, it's worse. They need 10 times more corn that is produced in their own county. So they have huge market power in their own county. But when we look at this, dry millers, 5 counts, on average, they need just less than 1, or they just need 67% of corn in their own county. Livestock operators, there are almost 20,000. So each of the livestock operators, they consume only 20% of corn. So I have defined this market as oligopsonist and competitive fringe. So ethanol plants at wet milling plants, they dominate the market with respect to price. So once they set up the price, the competitive fringe, they just follow their price and consume the corn at that price. So this is the first definition of the market under which my economic model developed. So here's 4 market features under which the economic model was developed. First of all, this is the one that I have explained so far. The corn procurement market involves ethanol and wet milling plants that are spatially differentiated. So corn purchase involves transportation costs, and then such that firms prefer buying corn from nearby suppliers. Second of all, dry millers, livestock operators, and exporting firms, they are small buyers, so competitive fringe. Large buyers compete with competitive fringe still, but the main point of this is who dominates the price and who follows the price. Okay. Third, large processors procure the majority of corn. This is the important thing. Their corn in the spot market by posting purchase prices at the plant gate, which is the mill gate. So which may result in spatial price discrimination. And then because of the transportation costs are covered by the sellers who are corn farmers in this case. Last, corn buyers do not have market power when selling their processed products in output market. So they normally operate full capacity. So we don't have to worry about the market power on the output side, only in input side. So that's why we focus on the oligopsonist market. So here is the structural models. My structural models composed of 2 parts. So the corn demand part and corn supply part. I'm going to explain demand part first. So demand part is about the profit maximization of ethanol plants and wet millers. So they compete with respect to price against each other. So oligopsonists, they choose county-specific corn price, which is the farm level price, right? So each ethanol plant and wet millers, they try to set up the different prices to farmers in different counties based on the distance. So this is the county-specific corn price for different counties to maximize their profits. So this is the profits, and this is the price of outputs, and this is the conversion ratio of output. So how much ethanol or how much processed outputs is produced from 1 bushel of corn. So just the unit of corn. And this is the amount of corn that each plant buys from corn producers. So this is actually the revenue part, first part. And then the second part is the cost of purchasing corn. So this is the input price, and this is the amount. So hold on. So this is the input price, corn price that each plant charges to different counties. And Q, this is the amount of corn amount that each plant purchases from different farmers in different counties. And the third part is going to be the operating cost. Fourth part, this is the fixed cost. Normally it is installation cost when the plant opens and commissioned. And this profit is subject to these two constraints. The first constraint is about how much corn, the amount of total corn that each plant purchase should be less than or equal to its capacity. And second constraint about the suppliers. The farmers can sell the total amount of corn, and the total amount of corn that each farmer sells, it should be less than its supply in its own county. So this is the gain model or the profit maximization model of the buyers. And then I'm going to solve the best response function of this Bertrand-Nash pricing game. And then this is
Professor, excuse me. Yeah, in the first equation, we have alpha, and you say in your paper that that is constant over time and equal to $2.7 per bushel. So in the period of analysis, there is no increase in efficiency or productivity. No, you assume that this is constant. Is there a problem with that, or is the reality of the industry?
Oh, that's a really good question. Actually, the time period that this study is interested in is from 2004 to 2014, and already in 2004, the technology of the ethanol plant is already matured. So 2.7 from 2004 and 2014 it is constant because, like I said, the technology is already matured. So if it's not, I have to assume different conversion ratio year by year, like you just pointed out. But in this case, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just go on? Okay. So this is the supplier. So I have assumed that those corn suppliers, they behave as, they act like a discrete choice model of corn suppliers. So they have to choose which buyers to sell their corn to, like ethanol plants or wet millers, dry millers, livestock operators, and exporters, based on their value function. So this U is the value that farmer N in county I receives from selling their corn to individual plants. That is dependent on price they receive from different plants, and it also depends on the distance because they have the transportation cost. Third, this is EJ is an indicating variable for the plant J is an exporter or not, because the international price of corn is normally much higher than domestic corn price. So the farmers is close to export import. They try to sell their corn to export imports to receive a higher price. So this is the value function of the supplier. And like I said, I have assumed the discrete choice model. The market shares equations can be based on the value function of the supplier. So this shows the market shares of the corn supplied to different individual ethanol plants. So if the farmer chooses to sell their corn to plant J, it's going to be the share of the corn in one county to plant J1, J2, J3, J4. And if I multiply the corn supply in the county to the share, it's going to be the amount of corn sold from or produced or supplied from one county to each different plant. And then I'm going to put this equation in this model in Q, and then solve the whole profit maximization problem so that I can just recover the firm level corn price that each plant offer to different farmers. And then finally, this is going to be the model. So this model estimates two things. First, recovering firm level prices. And at the same time, this is going to be estimate the structural parameters such as these betas. So the whole picture of this, I'm going to choose a candidate vector of supply parameters, beta. It's going to be the candidate parameters. And then I just plug into this model so that I can have a the closed form of the equation. And then I can solve the price, firm level price, and then aggregate it up to the market level because I have a market level data, which means I have the price data at county level, but not plant level. So once I recover the firm level data from the model, and then I can just aggregate it up to the county level. So average county price recovered from my model. And at the same time, I have the market level data in which is the county level data. And I'm going to compare those two, like predicted county level data from my model and observed county level price from USDA data source. And then I just iterate this whole process again and again and again by updating the candidate parameters until the distance between predicted price and observed price becomes small enough. And then if the difference between those two is less than 0.00001, and I'm going to pick that candidate parameter as a estimated supply parameter. Is this clear? I hope this is clear, but if you have any difficulties understanding this whole process of estimation, you can just ask me a question whenever you have any hard time. So this is the whole model. Like I said, I'm going to minimize the distance between predicted price with candidate parameter and then observed price. So this is the whole objective function of this model, which is called mathematical programming with equilibrium constraints. Subject to this whole equation is the first order conditions of the profit maximization model that we have already seen before over here. So this is the whole model. I can just implement it into GAM's software so that I can just solve firm level price and supply parameters at the same time. So this is the identification part. So residual supply, I'm going to estimate structural parameters of residual supply function and marginal cost function. So residual supply function, so beta P, this is based on the relationship between the variation of corn price and output prices. Second, beta D, this is based on the variation of corn price and distance, the variation of distance between plant and county centroid. Beta E, this is based on the variation of corn prices and variation of distance between the nearest exporting port and farmers. For the marginal cost function, alpha and G, this is the other than corn, there are two main inputs of producing ethanol, natural gas and electricity. So alpha natural gas is based on a variation of corn price and variation of natural gas price. So, and then at the same time, alpha electricity is based on the variation of corn prices and the variation of electricity prices. And alpha time, this captures the technological improvement. So still, even though the conversion rate is the same, but there should be some invisible technological improvement over the time period that this study is interested in. So here's the result. First of all, residual supply parameters. So this parameter does not have any direct meaning on corn price because our equation is based on nonlinearity, like exponential forms and everything. So the number does not have direct meanings, but the sign is very important. So if the corn price, the sign of corn price is positive, which means if the farmers receive the higher price, they become willing to sell more corn to the ethanol plant. And the distance, the sign of distance is negative, which means if the distance is higher, that means farmers are located far from the ethanol plants. They supply their corn, so they become less willing to supply their corn because they have to pay high transportation costs. Export dummy, it's a positive, but very small. So if they are located closer to the exporting port, they still be more willing to supply their corn because they can get higher corn price from the international market. Marginal cost, like I said, they're all positive for inputs, natural gas price. So the price of their input, which is natural gas price, is higher, the operating cost is higher. Electricity price, same, but time trend, it's negative, which means with time, there are still technological improvement so that they can save some money for operating. And then extra cost, per unit of unutilized capacity, this is about the full capacity assumptions. Conceptually, most of the plants, they try to enjoy their scale of economy so that they normally try to operate their plant at capacity. So if they produce less than its full capacity, there should be some extra cost. So in this case, it's positive, but very small. So based on this parameter estimates, I try to check the validity of this parameter estimates. So this is the driver statistics. Transportation cost. Previous studies, most of them shows the transportation cost of 1 bushel of corn is 0.16 cents, but mine is 0.5 cents, a little higher than the previous studies. This previous studies is the average transportation cost over all corn belt area of 11 states in the United States, but mine is only for Indiana. So that may explain the difference between estimated transportation cost. But capacity utilization ratio, so previous studies, they show that most of the ethanol plants or wet millers, they operate 95 to 97% of their full capacity. My case, yes, it's pretty similar. 97% of the operating, the ethanol plants and wet millers, they operate 97% of their total capacity. And then the marginal processing cost per gallon. So previous study says ethanol plants, for example, the cost of producing 1 gallon of ethanol from corn is $1.35. My model estimates that it's going to be $1.68. And then the firm elasticity of residual corn supply is almost 0.1. So this shows that my parameter estimate is pretty validated. Well, let me just move on to qualitative explanation of this study. So there are a substantial markdown for the first graph. This orange line shows the competitive benchmark, which is the value of marginal product. So if the market is perfectly competitive, this should be the corn price. And then now the corn price estimated and recovered from my model is this, the gray line. So there should be some markdown. So the difference between orange line and gray line is the markdown, which is represented by the blue line. So here's the thing. In 2004, there is only one ethanol plant in Indiana. And then 2004, 2006, yeah, there's still only one ethanol plant, but at the same time from 2004, US government tried to support ethanol production to help farmers still, but there's only one ethanol plant in Indiana, which means that single ethanol plant have a market power to exercise. So they try to push corn price down, and then the market down increases from 2004 and 2006. And in 2007, there are 3 ethanol plants entering the market. Now they compete against each other for corn. So they have to pay higher corn price to purchase. So corn price goes up, markdown goes down. And in 2008, there are other 3 extra plants coming into the market. So now the degrees of competition in Indiana is become stronger. So all of them have to pay higher corn price, markdown goes down. 2009, there are 1 ethanol plants coming in. 2010, no, but 2011, there are 2 more ethanol plants. 2012, this is the peculiar case because they have to, the corn price is a little, much higher than its competitive benchmark. This is because there was a huge drought in Indiana, so that the corn production is almost half than usual. So it's still, but at the same time, the ethanol plants or wet millers, they still have to produce and operating at full capacity, so they have to pay a higher amount in 2012. And after the drought, it recovers again. And in 2004, still there are $1 marked down. So here's the general picture of the markdown. So on average, it is estimated that there are 67 cents of markdown. And then this can be decomposed into two sources of market power. First, capacity constraints, and second, spatial differentiation. So here's the thing, capacity constraints. In the usual set of model, the buying power model, so this is the supply of corn, and this is the demand, which is based on the value of marginal product. And if there is enough capacity, and this is the marginal factor cost, is the derivative of the supply corn. And then so marginal factor cost is equal to marginal the revenue over here. So normally this point is optimal procurement in the absence of capacity constraint. So now this difference is the markdown. However, the capacity of each ethanol plant is a lot smaller than this point. So normally it's over here. So they have capacity constraint. They still, they cannot purchase as much corn as they want because the capacity constrains them. So the markdown gets bigger. Yeah, this is the whole picture of the markdown. This is the result of counterfactual simulations of industry consolidation. So the blue bar shows there is extra 14 cents of a markdown if two plants nearby consolidate each other. However, the plants far away, if they merge each other, if they consolidate each other, there is no almost no impact at all because this is based on the spatial differentiation and localized market. So two plants in the same local market, they consolidate each other, the competition level in that local market becomes smaller, a lot smaller. But two plants far away from each other, which that does not constitute the same local market before, even though they consolidate each other, the degrees of competition between those two doesn't change at all. So this is pretty consistent with our intuition. Third, this is the case for the consolidation between nearby plants. Like I said, the blue line, blue bar, this is the extra increase in markdown of two consolidated plants. But at the same time, so this is the non-consolidated case. So still, the degrees of competition in the whole market become smaller. Even non-consolidated plant, they try to enjoy that reduced degrees of competition so that they increase markdown by 12 cents, which is the lesser degrees than the one that consolidated plant exercise, but still. So this non-consolidated plant is located 49 miles away from the merged plant. And this one, also non-consolidated plant, located 103 miles away from consolidated plants. They still enjoy the benefits they can exploit from the reduced degrees of competition, but the lesser degrees. So here's the reduction of farm surplus. Let me show you this. These four red circled ethanol plants owned by the one firm merges this red dots. So in this case, these two plants composed of the same local market. So in this case, markdown in this area is big, and the reduction of farm surplus, sorry about that, the reduction of farm surplus is big. So the darker the blue color, the higher the reduction of farm surplus, which means the consolidation effect is higher. So the farmers receives a lot lower price whenever they consolidation happens. But farmers here, far away from the merged, they were not affected from the consolidation. So here's the conclusion of this research. I developed a structural model of corn procurement market to measure market power and spatial differentiation in Indiana. Like I said, our structural model found the evidence of spatial differentiation based on high transportation cost as a source of oligopolistic market power, but I did not find any spatial price discrimination. And then the market down is substantial based on spatial differentiation and capacity constraint subgame structure. Finally, consolidation increased markdown for both consolidated, much, and non-consolidated firms, a little lesser. The effect is stronger between nearby competitors when they merge. So this is all I have for today. So if you guys have any questions, say for later, just feel free to ask, and then I will answer that. Thank you so much for listening, which is too long.
Thank you, Professor Young. Maybe there is a question from the attendees. ¿Hay alguna pregunta de quienes asisten el día de hoy? Por acá algunas. Professor Young, what about about the efficiency of new cars, or what is the role that in transportation cost evolution that play the more efficiency, the more miles per gallon that new trucks may have in this analysis you do?
So can I just double check if my understanding for that question is correct? So how the high transportation costs play a role in this exercising market power? Do I understand the question?
Yeah, that is the question, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, so transportation cost, transportation cost limits the distance that farmers can travel to sell their corn. So normally, like I said, transportation cost estimated in this study is 0.5 cents. So I did not show you this, but let me just show you this extra slides. So I also estimated that, so here's the thing. Based on my research, farmers, they can travel 50 miles because of the high transportation cost, and then the corn price they receive, which means they cannot go farther than 50 miles to supply their corn to the others, which means now the plants in one county, they have almost big market power because the farmers cannot have any option to supply their corn. Like no one else, they can supply their corn. So in around 50 miles, which is the one county away, and then at the same time, so think about this. So farmers around this county, they have only one ethanol plant because of the high transportation cost. That gives this ethanol plant bigger market power to exercise. But however, on the other hand, farmers in this area, of course, they have some other options. In this case, even though the transportation cost high, they have other, any ethanol plants to supply their corn. So now in this case, the ethanol plants that compete, and then the market power is smaller in this area. I couldn't show you this, but the corn price in this area is a lot less and a lot lower than the corn price here, based on my research result. Does this answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I found very interesting your structural approach to explicitly estimate the transportation costs at a firm level production cost parameters. Do you believe this methodology may be applied to another industries, agriculture markets?
Yes, actually, with my the Juan Pablo Sesmaro and then the Ralph Dibert, we just started working on the beef meat packing industries. So beef market, it's still pretty much the same. It's fresh, and the transportation cost to keep it fresh is very high. And at the same time, there's a spot market as well. So the ranchers, sledders of the beef, they have limited option to transport their beef to the meat packers. And there are only few meat packers in Indiana and everywhere. So in this case, for the level of firms like JLBL, Purdue, all of these meat processors, they control 80% of the whole beef sledder market. And at the same time, the transportation cost of those products is really high. So I think I can apply my methodology to that spatial market of the beef meat packers. And at the same time, the poultry market is the same. The poultry, which is chicken market, it's still the same. They, the processors, they do not, and the farmers, they do not they cannot transport to a higher distance because of the higher transportation cost as well. So I just try to apply my methodology to those two beef meat packers and poultry markets.
Okay, finally, I want to comment that you offer the code of GAMS, GAMS code, and is available if anyone wants to request from you on the hours, right?
Sure, because of course, for transparency, of course, I am always ready to provide my GAMS code to anybody who needs it. And at the same time, this work has been accepted to American Journal of Agricultural Economics 2 weeks ago, and now finalizing the formattings and editing styles. And then they also request me to upload my GAMS code for transparency policy. So if you guys, if any one of you guys need my code, I am more than welcome to provide it by myself, or if it is posted on AJAE website, you can still download my code.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There is another question. Let me see it. Okay, we have no more questions. Thank you, Professor Young, for your presentation. It was very clear.
It was very fun. It was very fun, and it was good practice for me again. So yeah, thank you so much, Professor Fosco, again for inviting me for this awesome opportunity seminarial session. And if I have, you know, some more things to share, like my future research based on this methodology for beef market, poultry market, and if we have another chance in the future, please feel free to call me again.
Okay, welcome. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And thank you, other audience, for coming here, which is really early in the morning, right? 8 a.m. I can't believe how early it is, but thank you for coming and listening to my the presentation and asking me some questions.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're welcome, Professor Young, for a future presentation or participation of this economic seminar. Thank you very much for and I hope all these COVID-19 and the vaccination goes well also in Korea and everything goes right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.